last week somebody asked how I was adding string to my project, and I thought that would make for a cool video. So here we are, right? By the way, this is Kevin, also known as AWOL, and in today's video, I'm going to explain how I got this thing started. Now, here's the pattern of what we're adding on, and that right there is the row that all this stuff goes on as, right? So first will be the orange and the blue, followed by the red and orange, and then followed by the yellow and blue, and then the two whites, and then it just reverses itself. So how do we do that? Okay, we I have the string folded in half so the ends are like at the other side and the loop goes underneath. Then I put the long tails through that loop and it makes what's known as a lark's head. At least I believe that's what it's called. But regardless, if you watch how I'm doing it, it's relatively simple. Um, this is at real speed, except I did cut out having to go back and forth to get the string. So um, I try to make this video a little bit less like watching paint dry and a little bit more informative. So this bit does take a little bit longer than this. But you can see that I'm forcefully making it go as far to the right, because if you don't get it nice and tight, what you'll end up with is a really wide diamond, and it ends up being wider and shorter, and it messes up the whole way the rest of the thing works. So, um, basically, when I get to the middle here, you'll see I'm going to tie the two whites together, and that's the center. And from here, I can kind of start to gauge, because you can kind of shift the whole group, but if you get too many strings on there, you can't shift it anymore. So at this point, I can kind of see whether or not it's in nice and tight. I can start adding, the other colors, the blue coming across. And then obviously I have to go and add the blue and the yellow to the other side to get the other side of the knots. Now, as far as the sequence of the colors, right? I went with exact same sequence as what is in the diagram I showed you. And I know that I don't have to do that. I know that that's not necessary. For example, like this blue and the yellow here, right? The blue is going to go to the left and then to the right to come down. I know that I could switch those two around and just make it a right facing knot. But that's not what is on the diagram. And if you try to overthink these things and you try to be clever, you run the risk of making a mistake. And on something as big as this, I want to take as little risks as possible, because messing this up, well, that's a lot of strings. Right now, the project has about 250, give or take, strings already on the project. Um, so if you can take steps, easy steps, that make it so that way you're less likely to have a problem down the road. It's just a little error like that. It can save you a lot of headaches, a lot of trouble. Because I get it. I know what it feels like to find a mistake 10 rows back and it's just too far back to really want to undo it. And now you're ready to scrap the whole project. And then you start to question, like, do I even want to do this kind of stuff anymore? It it can hit, kind of deep in the feels. And ways to avoid it are just taking the little steps that makes doing these kind of projects just a little bit safer, I guess would be a good description for that. Um, because, like I said, I get it. I get why it would be, it would look enticing to just change things around, but it can really lead to real problems down the road if you mistakenly pick up the wrong string and do it the wrong way, and then now you have an error too far back to fix. But okay, anyways, moving on. Um, you can see that this piece is starting to take shape, but each knot as I'm tying it, I'm trying to be cautious to make sure that I'm not either over tightening it or under tightening it, because it is the beginning of the row and it will take a shape on everything else. And obviously I was having a little trouble with my clip there trying to get it on. But you can see trying to get the right shape out the beginning so that way it takes and holds the shape so you have a really good diamond. And um, that's why it's good to have some extra clips just kind of laying around. Like in this case here, clipping that string, keeping that string really nice and tight in a nice straight line will help make sure that this next row goes in a nice straight line. It's it's a little trick, but again, little things can add up to making your bigger project come out looking exactly the way you wanted it. Um, and this is totally coming out like how I imagined it. And that's why I wanted to show you guys, is because if I can do it, I'm sure that you guys can too, right? It's just practice and acquiring some skills along the way. And one of the skills I have is my ability to um, remember all these little tiny lessons, all these, what does it take to go into it, how to keep yourself entertained and excited about a project. Something like this, um, I get kind of excited if I just finish a square, kind of give myself a little attaboy for just finishing a little bit. When I finish a whole row, then that's fantastic. If I can do one of those rows in a day, um, that means it's only a limited number of days before I'm all the way down to the end of this project. And once you kind of get those ideas into your head, you'll realize that there's nothing you can't accomplish. I mean, this could have been a pillow at this length, around 250 strings. You could have a good sized throw pillow to be able to toss onto your couch. Mind you, it you still have to add string, because so far the lengths of this is, well, it's not very long, not too tall or long, or however you want to put that. Um, so I would definitely have to add strings some point down the road. But width wise, yeah, this is totally already to a size of a pillow. It's 43 cm, which is about 17 inches across so far. So, um, and mind you, because the strings are doubled up, it'll be easier for me to add the string, which I'll do in a video when I get to that point. Um, and it makes the knots thicker so that 250 strings equals 17 inches, as opposed to if I did it single stranded, it would be maybe half of that, close to half of that. So obviously, I want this to last for a really long time, you know, and this is how it's going to do it. Mind you, too, I did it on the string because, and we talked about this on the live video, um, a big canvas like this should be able to go into a washing machine. So I know that some people have suggested if it's going to be a wall hanging, that I could do it on like a wooden dowel, but the artworks I've seen on a wooden dowel mean that you can't just run it through a washing machine, right? You would ruin it pulling the dowel out to do it. And if it gets dusty from being on the walls for a number of years, what do you do then? I mean, I don't, it's canvas. I've had bracelets that, I've worn for 6 years, never take them off, through the shower, through the mud, through whatever I went through, and they hold up. So yeah, I'm not afraid of putting my work, like even my handbags and stuff, through a washing machine. It works just fine. Um, so yeah, so we put two strings on, you make one knot before going on to the next one. If you try to put this like one string and then put it together, you can actually make the, instead of being flat, you can actually make it into a diamond. So that's a whole thing for another day when we want to play around with that. Actually, I think I did one. If you look up on my channel, the bookmarks, you can see where I did a bookmark where it has a diamond at the top. So, and that's by just doing where you just start tying to the next one over without putting two on at a time. So now that I have um, basically all the strings for that little square, what I'll end up doing is the next diamond down to help make sure that that whole thing is in place and stays firm before adding on any more strings, right? Because I don't want the little nuances to influence the way the rest of it goes. So once it's all one solid piece, moving on to the next part just makes it a little bit easier, less likely for a mistake again. So number of strings so far mentioned is around 250. Um, and somebody asked, and I didn't know the answer, so I looked up my math. Now, I'm not 100% sure anymore whether or not this is right, but I estimated when buying the string, I estimated that there would be 864 strings going from end to end. So, and that's because it's supposed to be approximately 1.5 meters wide, and that's 4 foot 11 inches for the Americans, right? Um, and then the height of it is somewhere between half a meter and zero point 0.6 of a meter or 60 cm, which would be between a foot and 7 inches and 2 feet. So it's a really, really big wall hanging. And I had to look up all these measurements. I'm so used to metric after being in Singapore for 10 years now that I just do metric now. It's just a thing. So I apologize I didn't have that last time. I worked it out, the math for you guys. And there we go. The lengths of the string, somebody asked, was I doing it any different for the bags? No. Already when I cut the strings at 1/3 of a skein, which is it's pretty long. It's I don't know the actual length of that, but it's eight a skein is 8 meters. So even if you're buying embroidery floss, it comes in metric. You can't avoid it. Um, but it's a third of that, so it's more than 2 meters long. Is already enough that when I make the arm movements, I don't really want to make it any longer than that. Um, and it's I'm kind of used to this length by now. It's sort of, not too tiring. When I first started using that length, I came from using, I used to use a quarter length, right? Cut the embroidery floss into 4 pieces. Um, and I did that for a number of years. So when I switched to 1/3, it did kind of give me some pain in my shoulder. But now that I'm used to it, this is my new favorite standard. I can do more patterns without the worry of running out of the string too soon. So that's why I kind of do it. And yeah, for this I did not change that. I did not want to go any longer than it was. So there it is. Um, Somebody else asked an interesting question, like what would be the cost of this? And like at the end product. Now, at this point in it, it's really hard for me to say because I don't know how many strings it will literally have into it. Um, but I suspect it would have to be into the hundreds of dollars. It would have to be just to make it worthwhile to me to do it. Um, if there's what 864 strings, that's oh man, if we divided that, I don't even know. It's almost incomprehensible to me to be able to even like if there was I don't know if there was 10 strings into a bracelet and that was $10. There's, you know, $860 maybe. Maybe that would be the total. I honestly, it's it's not something I would really try to work out in my head unless somebody was going to make me an offer, and I would have to then work out in my head whether or not that's a reasonable amount to take. Because honestly, this thing is going to take months and months to make, and time is should be worth something, even if for us crafters. I know that a lot of my bags are not priced at a price point that makes sense for the amount of work that went into this. Um, and it is what it is. I mean, there's a lot of people out there making bracelets, selling them for, $5 or $2 and stuff. Your time is worth more than that. It's not fair that, people expect these kind of prices from us just because it's not car repair, it's not computer repair, it's not. But honestly, the time should be of value. It should be worth something. So, yeah. Anyways, so yeah, it's a wall hanging that I'm making for me. This is something that I want when people come into the house to see what I'm capable of doing. And I hope that perhaps maybe one day, maybe after I die or something, that this is something that could end up in a museum, because I've seen tapestry works in museums and stuff, and I don't know how much work actually goes into making those, but I suspect that my work pretty much, it's top of the line quality kind of stuff, right? It's as good as this kind of stuff is ever going to get. So yeah, that's kind of what I hope for it. Like I said, I don't know if it'll happen. I don't know. Once I'm dead, it won't matter to me because I'll be dead. But that's what I want out of my project. And like I said, I kind of like the idea of that kind of a look in my house. I mean, this is something that I think, I can be really proud of, and even, years and years from now, I'm still going to want to look back at this and think, yep, that was mine. And mind you, too, my vision for this house is, you know, this is on the wall, and then the seating area around it's going to have pillows, throw pillows made out of my fabrics and my choices of colors and whatever designs interest me in doing something that repetitive. And it probably won't be this complex next time, for like say a pillow. I might choose some really simple patterns, because even if you did like say a chevron, if you do enough chevrons next to each other, like double wide, triple wide, quadruple, you do enough, even a chevron starts to look pretty complicated. So um, if you're maybe not ready to do something this complex, but you want a pillow or you want a wall hanging or whatever, any pattern is possible. I have no doubt in my mind that there will be something with this pattern as a pillow as well, because it's my favorite pattern. Might not be those colors, but it was one of my first patterns I did on my own, and since then I've used it in a number of different ways. And yeah, that's kind of, it's a pattern that I can do without even having any thoughts. I don't have to look at the papers. I don't have to do much of anything. So the wall hanging, I do have to actually look at the patterns some of the time. I've been I'm kind of getting to the point to where there's only a few of them that I actually have to look at anymore. Like this pattern I'm doing here in the video, I've already got this one figured out. Some of the other ones are a little bit more complex, and I need to kind of remind myself what I'm doing. But I imagine, in another week or so, I should probably have those ones figured out as well. It's just is what it is, right? Do something long enough, and you could be very good at it. Um, so that's kind of answering a lot of the questions I kind of got last time, and some of them I wasn't able to answer very well. And hopefully you got an idea on how I can get the nice straight start on, the top of this, how it's all nice and flat. And mind you too, once I take these clips off, I'll shape it a little bit, make sure that everything is the way it should be before I go on and add more string, right? So, um, but hopefully you guys have learned something from this. Hopefully I've given you some inspiration or whatever. Um, Next week, I'm planning on doing another live video because it's a lot of fun and gives me a chance to answer you guys' questions directly and gives me inspiration for videos down the road. So I'm going to do it again next week. Hopefully you guys can be there. I'm going to do it on Saturday because it makes it a lot easier for people who aren't necessarily like if you had school or that kind of stuff. So Saturday seems like a better bet. Um, Before I go, I do want to thank all my Patreon supporters. You guys are what have kept me going even when I thought I was going to give up on this channel. So I want to say thank you to all my Patreon supporters. You guys really what makes all of this stuff possible. And oh, if you have any kind of questions, leave it in the comments and I will try to address those either in the live video or in the video comes after this. So, all right. Well, until next time, don't get your strings in a bunch.